Hello, hello, and welcome to another episode of Lead with Less. I'm Tash, your host, certified people leadership coach. And in this episode, I'm talking to you about the 3 must-dos during your break. This is our last episode for the year. Whenever you're listening to this, this is the last episode for 2024. And I wanted to share 3 must-do things for you to focus on during your break so that you can actually have a really good break, you can reset, and you can come back to the new year being incredibly recharged and excited for a year ahead, as in the amazing leader that you are. So, this will be a short, sharp episode yet again, really trying to do those at the moment. And some of the things that I'm going to share in this episode are slightly repetitive to some of the things that I've talked about in the lead up to this episode. So, in episode 73, how to set you and your team up for a holiday break, which I will be referencing, and also a little bit maybe from episode 72, don't get sucked into these 3 things at the end of the year. And the reason that I'm repeating them a little bit is because I want to emphasize how important they are and how much of a difference they're actually going to make to you if you focus on them, if you practice them, and if you prioritize them. I'm just going to get stuck in because I want you to feel like this episode is really practical, tangible, and you can take it into your end of year feeling really in control, hopefully, and feeling really good. The first thing that I really encourage you to focus on during your break is to actually be offline. Sounds super simple, but how often do we actually not do this? Be offline. If you can't be 100% offline, then you're not actually setting yourself and your team up for success. And I talked about this in episode 73, how to set your team up for the holiday break. You need to make sure that your team know exactly what they need to do, what they need to finish before the break, and what is expected of them over that break time before they come back for the new year. Now, you'll have a number of people that are on leave. You will have some people who are maybe doing some work across that time, being part of your quote unquote skeleton staff. Make sure that those priorities are really clear and they know what's expected. And if people do need to get in contact with you for whatever reasons they need to get in contact with you, that they know that. If you don't have that 100% clear, you're not able to be fully offline. So please do that and prioritize that. If you haven't done that yet, maybe this is your last week of leave, maybe this is your last couple of days at the time that this episode is released, focus on that because it is going to help you and serve you so much in the long run. I promise. So go back and listen to episode 73 if you haven't already. We'll link it down in the show notes so that you can focus on that and make that a priority. Now, the reason that this one is so important, being offline, is because recharging only happens when we actually give ourselves the space to recharge. So if you are meant to be on leave, if you're meant to be offline, and you are thinking about all of the things that you still need to do, you're worrying about all of the things that you still need to do, you're worrying about your team, you're worried about all of this stuff, you're not actually giving yourself the space to recharge, even though you might be on leave, quote unquote. Being offline actually gives your brain the capacity to genuinely recharge, to reset, and it needs the space to do that. If you are filling up your brain with all of the work stuff, you're not fully recharging and giving yourself the space to actually properly feel good in yourself and on this break. So if you are thinking about things, if you're worrying about things, write it all out so that you can put it somewhere and then you can move on with your day. Like, really make it a practice that if things are bubbling up in your mind that are work related and you're meant to be on leave, that you're really putting it somewhere where you don't need to think about it. You can just be with yourself, with your family, with your time off. This is so important. And the practice of writing it out, the practice of putting it onto paper is actually really powerful because that energetic transfer from your brain to a page is powerful. And if you aren't a notebook person, if you don't have a piece of paper, just pop it in your notes app on your phone. Just have a folder on your notes app on your phone where you brain dump anything that comes up over the break. And then when you get back to work after your leave, you can tap in to that notes app and go, okay, what did I think about while I was on leave? Is any of that actually even necessary? Is any of that still even relevant? Because I can guarantee you that there might be a lot of things that aren't actually relevant at all. Please try and do that. It will make such a huge difference. I've spoken about this before, but if you are online, if you are on annual leave and you keep checking in with your people, that is actually a signal of you not trusting that they can do their jobs. If you have set clear expectations, which I cover in episode 67, which we'll also link in the show notes, how to set and manage expectations. If those things have been done really well, there is no reason why your team shouldn't know what needs to be done, or that there aren't parameters in place in order for them to handle things that come up, right? Please focus on that. It'll be harder at first. It'll feel really challenging at first, but the more that you do it, the more that you practice it, the easier it will become. I honestly promise you that. Point number 2, do enjoyable things. This is the second most important must do for your break. Do enjoyable things. One of the things that we say a lot when we're working is, I don't have time. I'm too busy. I can't do that. When you're on holiday, you have time. Sure, it might not be full unbroken time because you might have children, you might be visiting family, you might have some activities booked in, but there is pockets of time while you're on leave to do things that you really enjoy, especially if you do it intentionally. So focus on things that you really enjoy, that you usually say you don't have time for, that you can't make a priority. Focus on those things that will fill up your cup. This is where being offline is really critical, right? If you're prioritizing step number 1, where you're really being offline, you're really creating that space, you're going to have more space and time to actually do the things that you really enjoy. That is the most powerful and most important thing. And organize this with your partner. So, your partner, your husband, your wife, your children, so that you have space to do the things that you really enjoy. And that might be, okay, for the first half of the day, I get to go and I get to go surf, or I get to go for a walk, or I get to go hike, or I get to, I don't know, go and catch up with some friends. And then in the second half of the day, your partner might get some time to go and catch up with their friends or go and do things that they really enjoy, so that there is a feeling of equalness between your family. And then there might be days where you do things all together with the children, with your partners, so that, again, it's not just about having lots of time to ourselves, but that the time that we have and the time that we really create and focus on is really intentional and really focused on things that we enjoy, and that's going to fill us up, because that's going to help us recharge, reset, and really set us up for when we come back to work in the new year, that we have that fullness in our batteries, that we have that fullness to show up, to go for another year. One of the things that I talk about a lot is that the time you don't have is the time you don't make, right? Time doesn't just appear out of nowhere. You need to make it and create it so that it works for you. If you want to do more things that you want to do, if you want to do more things that you enjoy, if you want to do things that make you feel like the best version of yourself, you need to ensure that you're creating the time to do that. That might mean that other things may need to shift and move in order to make that happen. That's not a bad thing, right? This is why I don't talk about balance. I talk about being present moment to moment, because not everything can be in balance all of the time, but we can be present to the ebbs and flows, to the different things that are being asked of us, and then making sure that we have our supportive boundaries in place in order to do that. And I do have an episode on setting boundaries, which is episode 63, Setting Boundaries as a Leader, and we'll link that in the show notes for you as well, for you to go back and listen to that one if boundaries might be something that you need to focus on. So that is the must do number 2, do enjoyable things. Now, must do number 3 is celebrate bright spots and wins. And I spoke about this in the last couple of episodes as well, because again, it's a really critical one, especially for mindset, but also for energy. Now, this is important because the more that we focus on things that went well, the more that we focus on things that have worked, the more you will actually feel recharged. One of the most draining things that our brains can do is fixate on the unfinished, the not done, the quote unquote failures, and that just zaps all of the energy out of us. When we're constantly focusing on the negatives, we are draining every aspect of our energy out of our body. We're draining our life force. But when we focus on the bright spots, the bright moments in our year, in our day, in the last couple of weeks, we just get this energy refilling, right? And this is why people who are generally optimistic have more energy. Now, I'm not saying who are positive and who bypass the negative things, but people who are generally optimistic, who can acknowledge reality and see the amazingness of life and the potential of what could happen, have more energy. They have more vigor for life because they're focusing and celebrating the things that are working, the things that are going well, the things that they have done. This is such a key aspect to the way that we manage our energy and the way that we can support our energy. So, celebrating the bright spots and the wins is really critical to feeling happier and fuller after a full year. It also sets you up for success as you lead into the new year. It makes such an incredible difference to how you want to feel, to what you want to do, and to really who you are. And the other reason why celebrating bright spots and wins is really important is because it helps you to continue to think about the things that you want more of. So when you're focusing on the bright spots, on the things that made you feel really good, your brain is going to start focusing on wanting more of that. It's going to want to create more of that in your life. And so when you come back from leave and you're thinking about how you want to show up at work, you're thinking about how you want to experience your year, it plays a huge part in creating the experiences that you want. Because when we're focusing on what we like, what we want more of, we create the experience of having more of that. And we notice more of that in our environment. We notice it showing up more and more. It is so powerful if we choose to focus on that, if we choose to make that an intentional part of how we're showing up. The brain doesn't discriminate on good or bad, positive or negative. It will focus on the bad things and it'll create more of that. It'll bring more of that into your attention, or it'll focus on the good things, the things that do work, the things that do go well, and it will create more of that. The difference is, what are you paying attention to? And the more that you can celebrate bright spots and wins, the more that you can create the experiences that you really want to have. So that's it. That's the episode that I really wanted to bring to you as the final episode for 2024, the 3 must-dos during your break. And this is something that I would actually encourage you to tune into at any time that you go on leave, because this isn't only relevant for the end of year break. This is relevant for any time you take annual leave, you take time away from work, that you focus on these 3 things because they really matter at any time. And the more that we can do that, the more that we can create experiences that really help us, support us, and fill us up. So recap. Must do number 1 is be offline, really focusing on being offline so that you can fully recharge and be present to your break. Number 2, do enjoyable things. Do the things that you really enjoy, the things that really make a difference to filling you up, making you feel full, excited, happy, optimistic, all of those things. Like, do things that you really enjoy. And then number 3, celebrate bright spots and wins. Focus on the things that really make you feel good about what you have achieved, what you have accomplished, and what you want more of, because it makes such a huge difference to how you feel and to the experience that you really want to create. So there we go. This is our final episode for 2024. I really hope that you got exactly what you needed out of it, and I really hope that you had an amazing year. I know for me, it's been a big one. It's been a big one emotionally, and I know that I'm going to focus on these 3 things while I'm on leave, because I'm definitely going to need that for another big year next year. So this episode was as much for me as it is for you, and I really hope that it has been helpful. And I know that there was a little promo inserted into this episode about the Leaders Lounge. I just wanted to remind you that the doors are open for another couple of weeks before we start off in January. So if you do want to jump in to a community of people leaders who want to build courage and confidence to lead into the future, then the Leaders Lounge is the space for you. And if you have any questions, please let me know. You can find all my contact details in the show notes. And I look forward to jumping back into your ears in 2025 and hopefully being a key part of your learning and development as a leader for the new year.